Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Cover 2 podcast. I am Nenad.
And I am Jared Smith.
And guys, we have a big show for you today. We are recapping the NFL draft that happened last weekend. It was our return to podcasting to talk about the NFL draft last week. So we're going to recap it a little bit, not go over it the entire show, but we're going to recap kind of what we talked about, what we predicted, who did better in their mock draft, stuff like that. And then we will also get into the NBA playoffs. We'll just give our take on kind of what's been happening. The NBA playoffs, if you aren't watching, are in the second round now. Games 1 and 2 being played by both the East and the West. And some interesting stuff happening with some of those series. So we're going to get into that. But first, Jared Smith, we have to talk about the biggest news in sports that's come out the last 2 days. And that is, my Arizona Cardinals. I'll show off the shirt here. We got the Arizona, the Cardinals. It's a Catholic priest mention.
Oh, okay. I was that one threw me off for a second. I
No.
wasn't sure what that was. Okay.
Jared, it's okay if you don't understand how cool this shirt is. That's fine. That's totally okay.
Apparently I don't. I've never ever seen that shirt before in my life. I've seen a lot of Arizona Cardinals gear. But never that shirt. I don't know where you got that from. But that may be the reason why Arizona is having all their struggles and all their controversy right now. So you might just want to put that one away for a little while.
That's true. I probably shouldn't be parading around shirts with Catholic priests on them, but nonetheless, we're going to get into another guy that got in trouble, and that's DeAndre Hopkins, a 6-game suspension for PEDS, PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. He's the Barry Bonds of football this year. And obviously, I think all of you listening know I'm an Arizona Cardinals fan. And to see this news, I instantly got angry. I was not happy. I went to Reddit. I went to Twitter. I went to Instagram. I called out DeAndre Hopkins on Twitter the minute after it happened. The fact that he didn't even appeal his suspension kind of gives away the fact that he knew he was on something or he knew he did something wrong. So that angered me too. As far as just my full thoughts on it, obviously you never want to lose a significant player on your team for 6 games, whether it be injury or suspension. Suspension hurts a lot more, obviously, because it didn't need to happen, right? There's plenty of things NFL football players use before, during, and after games to help them recover from their injuries, to help them recover from whatever happened during that game or whatever they had to deal with during the game. And for Hopkins to use a performance-enhancing drug, he can say all he wants that he didn't know what was going on and all that stuff, but to get a 6-game suspension means there was most likely a lot of it inside of him. So negligence on his part, negligence on his doctor, on his agent, the Cardinals trainer, everybody in this situation. It's terrible. As far as how it affects the season, initially I was like, oh, we lost Hopkins for 6 weeks, right? But if you guys watched the NFL draft, we traded for Mr. Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown, Kyler Murray's former wide receiver teammate at the University of Oklahoma. Go Sooners. So kind of gives away the fact that the Cardinals might have known about the suspension and they loaded up on offense for this year in anticipation that they're not going to have one of their players for 1/3 of the season. Now, interestingly enough, as you guys know, the Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray, they have a habit the last couple years and in Kingsbury's career of falling apart at the end of the season. So I see this as 50-50. Obviously, you don't want Hopkins to miss the first 6 games of the season because it hurts chemistry, and who knows? The Cardinals are going to have one of the hardest schedules in the NFL next year too. So if the NFL, gyps us and gives us a brutal schedule the first 6 games, you want to be able to win those so you get into the playoffs. But the other 50% of me is thinking, well, if we do the same thing where we have a good start, it's not the worst thing in the world to gain the best player on your team halfway through the season. So it will be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how the schedule lines up for us on May 12th next week. I'm going to be absolutely have my eyes glued on the TV wherever I am to see who our first 6 opponents are, but that's going to mean a lot. But I've ranted a little bit too long. Jared, your thought as an unbiased non-Cardinals fan on Hopkins' suspension and the Cardinals going forward post hearing about the suspension.
First off, I don't know where you are right now, but I'm just a little disappointed in the, how do I say this, like lackluster. I was expecting some more kind of fire out of you. You got that out on your Twitter rants, on your Instagram rants, and maybe you've had a couple days to kind of process things. But
yeah,
I was expecting a full-on Nick Nenad kind of yelling charade going on right now, and really getting this coverage podcast episode started today. So I am a little disappointed in
I apologize.
You not coming with that fire and that energy that I'm used to. I will say that, but like I said, you probably had a couple of days to recover. Number 2, I heard. Now this could be from a unverified source, but it was someone on Twitter who had a check mark, so I read it. They said that DeAndre Hopkins dropped his appeal.
Yes.
The first comments you said that DeAndre Hopkins, you didn't feel that he had appealed at all. I heard that he actually dropped his appeal. So he
That's what I meant.
Initially appeal the suspension, and then for whatever reason, drop the appeal and basically, say, okay, I'm gonna take the slap on the wrist, more than the slap on the wrist. I'm going to take that suspension. And number 3, and I don't know if you meant to word it this way, but it seemed like you were saying by the Hollywood Brown trade that he would, in a sense, come in and replace DeAndre Hopkins. Nick Nenad, I get you're a fan, and I get you're a little jaded and a little biased. I'm going to help you right now as a non-Arizona Cardinals fan. Ain't no damn way in hell Marquise Brown. I don't care if you call him Marquise. I don't care if you call him Hollywood. I don't care if he the first 2 games of the season he goes off for 200 yards plus. He is not DeAndre Hopkins. He will never be on DeAndre Hopkins. The only thing that he has going for him is that Kyler Murray was his teammate at Oklahoma, and they already had that rapport. It is a solid pickup. I don't blame the Cardinals for trading for a Hollywood Brown, but the loss of DeAndre Hopkins, still one of the best receivers in the entire league, is going to hurt you more than you think, right? It's not like they drafted a first-round receiver this year, because to me, Hollywood Brown is a threat. He does not run every route in the tree. He's somewhat of a one-trick pony when it comes to running receiving routes, right? He likes to run go routes, but it's not like he is a full-fledged wide receiver, in my opinion. So I think that's one of the reasons why the Ravens were okay with trading him, because they saw that he was not a multifaceted receiver that could do multiple different things in their offense. So for Arizona's offense, because they do want that deep threat, I can see how that fit will happen. But I'm a little hesitant to come in and say that Hollywood Brown is going to be the savior of this team, and he's going to, keep this team afloat while DeAndre Hopkins is gone for 6 games. I think that's going to hurt you a lot more than you would think. Unfortunately for you, you do know what it's like to not have DeAndre Hopkins, because half of last season, the back half, he was gone and in and out of the lineup because of injury. So, maybe it is a good thing that, that the Cardinals team already knows how to kind of work without DeAndre Hopkins. But still, when you're Kyler Murray, when you're wanting an extension, right, when you and your agent had basically come out and said you are not going to step onto the field unless the Cardinals present you with a contract that you feel is fair, there's a lot of things up in the air right now with this Cardinals organization. And, having to play in one of the best divisions in all football, I don't know how confident I would be going into the season. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your confidence level right now after everything going on? After the Kyler Murray drama, after now DeAndre Hopkins, after the trade, after the draft,
sure.
Where do you put your confidence in this team?
You know what? My confidence is actually a lot more post-draft than it was pre-draft. I kind of came on here and we were going to talk about Kyler Murray and all this stuff. And then we just kind of ran out of time last week. And I said, okay, well, next week or the week after that, I'll definitely talk about the Cardinals stuff. But then the draft happened. And so, besides Hopkins' suspension, which you can't do anything about, right? It's not like the Cardinals chose to give him up for 6 games. The Cardinals did choose Trey McBride in the second round of the NFL draft with their first draft pick. And they did choose to trade for Hollywood Brown. And Jared, let me clarify. I was not saying that Hollywood Brown can replace DeAndre Hopkins' production, but he's a damn good replacement for DeAndre Hopkins. It's better than Antoine Wesley or Andy Isabella or Rondell Moore having to be put in a spot where he's going to catch 120 passes technically instead of the 70 that he did or the 40 or 50 he did last season, right? It's okay. And, we don't need AJ Green in those big spots as well, right? I have nightmares of last year's Green Bay game still in my head. And I still kind of question why we signed him. But then again, DeAndre Hopkins is out for 6 games. So maybe we see an AJ Green cut at some point during the season. I don't know. I don't see where he really fits on the team as much anymore. But so that's what I'm saying. My confidence level is higher. Jared, look at our offense when Hopkins comes back, right? Barring major injury. The offensive line is still solid. It's not a bad offensive line. It's not a great offensive line. But Rodney Hudson, is still there. DJ Humphries is still there. Justin Pugh still there. And then you look at the weapons, right? Of course, Kyler Murray. He will play, and gaining his best friend in Hollywood Brown is going to keep him on the team. Steve Keim even said it before the draft. We like to do major extensions after the draft and after the free agency period because you want to see how your roster balances out, all that stuff. So I would assume Kyler gets an extension within this month of May. But look, speaking of the weapons, you have Kyler Murray. He's a top 10 quarterback in the league, at least top 12, right? Running back, James Conner, almost an MVP last year, right? Then they draft Keontae Ingram in the 6th round. I know 6th round pick isn't the biggest thing, but there's now a 1-2 kind of powerful combo in the Cardinals backfield. So, defenses aren't going to get breaks when we run the ball. Then, if Kyler decides to run the ball this year late in the season too, very dynamic running game. Look at the wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Rondell Moore, AJ Green, and even Antoine Wesley last year had some big plays, including a big touchdown against your Dallas Cowboys en route to beating your Dallas Cowboys last year. The tight ends, Zach Ertz, and now Trey McBride, who the Cardinals literally picked because he was available. They loved him so much that they decided to go with a tight end, even though they already had Zach Ertz and Max Williams. So this offense is so stacked that my confidence level, how could it go down, right? Yes, we do still have a technical need at corner. I have faith in Byron Murphy, and I hope Marco Wilson makes that extra step, Mr. Shoe thrower at Florida. We'll get Budda Baker back. We still have Jalen Thompson, one of the most underrated defenders in the league. Yes, we did lose Chandler Jones, but we gain a couple defensive ends in the draft, and our linebacking core is young and stable. So, Jared, my confidence level in the Cardinals is higher. And if I was going to give their offseason like a B-B, I think it's gone up to about a B+ now. And then once you get that extension for Kyler, got to give him an A, right? Extend your franchise quarterback. So, yeah, my confidence is high. And, Jared, that's why I didn't get all mad to start the podcast, because I'm not that mad at the Cardinals, right? Again, they didn't do anything wrong. Hopkins did something wrong. I called him out on Twitter. Hopefully he comes back. Hopefully he's the same guy. Hopefully he wasn't on PEDs, and that's the reason he's been so good the last couple of years, right? And he has that kind of hangover from PEDs, right? But I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine. We'll get into the schedule more when the schedule gets released. But if you look at who the Cardinals are supposed to play, it's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be tough for any NFC West team, because that's the way the schedule works. But it's going to be brutal. So again, I hope our easiest games are the first 6. Jared, let's switch topics back to the draft, though. I talked about the Cardinals picks, all that stuff, so we don't need to talk about them anymore. Give me your take on the draft and who you think did the best at drafting this last weekend.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, this draft was intriguing and exciting from the simple standpoint that we didn't know who was going to go number 1. right? The offseason, the majority of the pre-draft analysis, it was Aiden Hutchinson, the defensive end from Michigan, and he was in so many mocks, it was almost like, okay, he's guaranteed to go to the Jaguars. And then all of a sudden, about a week before, you see Walker, right, the defensive end from Georgia, kind of start to bring his name into that number one overall fold. And lo and behold, the Jaguars pick Walker number one overall. Now, if that was me, I would go with Aiden Hutchinson, because even though that might be the safer pick, I think you know exactly what you're going to get from Aiden Hutchinson, right? You're going to get a motor that is absolutely relentless, does not stop, and he will probably average anywhere from 8 to 12 sacks in his prime, in his career. In my opinion, out of Georgia, a bigger up. But I don't. That he still is not completely polished. And if you're drafting the number one overall pick, right? I want someone that is going to come in and be a day one starter. I do not necessarily have to worry about what I'm going to get from Hutchinson. If I'm, with Walker now, you still like, and I don't like to say this, even though Georgia's defense, they had 5 defenders drafted in the first round, and I believe they had, they either tied or they were at tops for the most picks from one team in 1 year, right? So they obviously had basically an NFL team that was out there with him, and I think that obviously helped his own production. I don't like to knock people for that, but still, you can't look at Walker without saying, okay, who else did he have alongside him on that defense that was helping him get those one-on-one matchups, that was helping him, get home to the quarterback?
Sure.
Jacksonville drafted defensive end number one overall because their defensive line is not that great, even though in the last 5 years or so, they have spent great resources when it comes to the draft in trying to get defensive line help, and it just hasn't worked. And so to me, I look at the Jaguars and I say, yeah, the number one overall this year in a row. I do have faith that Trevor Lawrence will bounce back, but looking at this number one overall pick, I was a little surprised that it wasn't Aiden Hutchinson, right? The other thing that kind of just caught my eye and is not a surprise is the run on wide receivers. And if I'm not mistaken, on last week's podcast, if you haven't looked, go back and check that one out before you listen to us today, was the fact that I were going to go quick, fast, and in a damn hurry. And that was because in free agency, we had so many receivers, Devon Adams, Tyreek Hill, all these guys getting traded, signing these mentions. Christian Kirk, formerly of your Arizona Cardinals, who signed with Jacksonville Jaguars in free agency, kind of kicked it off as one of the first, not only receivers, first free agent players to sign a contract. And he signed like an $84 million contract. And it's like,
it's ridiculous.
No offense to Christian Kirk, but man, like, you weren't that good in Arizona, right? Like the Jaguars were just handing out money, just giving away dollars. So I think because of the amount of money that we saw go to wide receivers in free agency, I think he top flight receiver in this draft and potentially have him for 3 to 4 years on a rookie contract. That sounds a lot better than having to dish out $100 million. Now, we did see teams like your Cardinals trade for Marquise Brown. They picked up his 5th-year option, so he will be with him for at least the next 2 years. We saw the Philadelphia Eagles trade in one of the most blockbuster trades in the entire draft, traded for A.J. Brown to the Tennessee Titans, then immediately signed him to a 4-year, $100 million extension. So to me, like I said, it was the wide receivers kind of stole the show, at least in the first round. And then even in the second and the third round, there was great value. This is one of the drafts that we've seen in a long time. So, if you're a wide receiver, whether it was this year or even coming up in the next year, you should be smiling, grinning ear to ear, because you know that your position is of high value right now.
Yeah, it's Jamar Chase's fault, man, that all these wide receivers are going so high. I like to see it too, Jared, because as we know, my brother is a wide receiver right now in college football. So anytime you hear that your family member's position is the highest valued besides quarterback at this point in the NFL, I'm down for it, right? So speaking of positions that weren't valued very high in this draft, quarterback. And it was very, very interesting to watch the way the quarterbacks went. I actually predicted that Kenny Pickett would get drafted by the Steelers in the first round. He's a Pittsburgh guy, and he did. So I was very, very excited to see that. But besides that, nobody even close to the first round. You have Malik Willis. He's going to back up Ryan Tannehill. They probably hope he eventually takes over. Desmond Ridder to the Atlanta Falcons. My boy Bailey Zappi did get drafted by the New England Patriots. So that I'll tell you that he's my most underrated player in this draft. You never know, Jared Smith. You never know the next Tom Brady, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
it was it was interesting for me because I had Malik Willis to go number 6 to the Panthers, or at least go in the 6th spot. Jared, you did too, looking at your mock draft as well. To me, I think, a lot of these teams, and this is what I would have done too, just looked at next year's quarterbacks and they said, you know what, it's not worth paying a guy this much money to be a starting quarterback that we don't even really know if he's going to be our guy. And we'll take our chances next year. When you look at the Panthers, they still have Sam Darnold, who's a solid quarterback. They didn't need to make a move, and that's clearly what they did. The Atlanta Falcons, their quarterback was Marcus Mariota. They go with Desmond Ridder. They also drafted Drake London, who I thought was a fantastic pick as well. And that's kind of their building block. And if Desmond Ridder doesn't work, they could always just go get a guy next year, like the Cardinals did with Kyler Murray and Josh Rosen. So for me, I thought the NFL was smart to not just jump at the fact that everybody needs a quarterback and a quarterback needs to get drafted in the first round. Everybody was kind of like, you going to draft a quarterback? No. You gonna? No. Because I think they saw that to have a great quarterback in this league, you also need weapons too. And the past couple of years, Aaron Rodgers didn't have a lot of weapons, and he's not able to win a Super Bowl. And you do need the full package of guys. There's no Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, right? There's no Kyler Murray at this point in his career without DeAndre Hopkins. So you do need those other guys, and that's why I think we see the value of the wide receivers go up. And then next year, we're going to get the Bryce Youngs, and we're going to get all these other guys getting drafted in the top 10 in the first round. So I applaud the NFL for not jumping and going too far with the quarterbacks again this draft. Jared, your thought on quarterbacks really being devalued in this draft?
No, you bring up a solid point. And I think I was still a little shocked because even though we've seen it in past years in almost every single draft, right? Even though quarterbacks, it may not be a deep quarterback class, it may not be an elite quarterback class like we saw last year where we had 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, it's still the most important position in the entire sport, right? If you do not have a quarterback, you are more than likely not going to win. There are very few instances I can probably count on my entire hand where we've seen a team make it to the playoffs and win a Super Bowl without an elite quarterback, right? It just does not happen very often. And so to me, like I said, I was a little shocked. Not so much that these quarterbacks, as in Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell didn't go in the first round, but like the second round, still, we went the entire second round, and those guys were still. Malik Willis, man, he went to the draft. Like, he was in the draft room. He had the full suit. He had his family there. He thought he was going to get drafted in the first round, and then he's got it. And it happens. He took a gamble going to the draft. Obviously, it didn't pay off. And day two, he still doesn't get picked. He has to wait till the third round. I think Tennessee, if you're Tennessee, you had to be like, all right, like, have to take this guy at this point, right? Like, obviously, it's one thing to not take him in the first round, and you still have Ryan Tannehill at least for this upcoming season. But I think Tennessee did a great job in getting Malik Willis, because if you can have him sit for at least a year, learn, right, kind of just be a sponge, soak up all info, his skill set and his talent, and the way that he can throw the football, I think using Derrick Henry as that great running back, as long as they can keep him under contract, keep that offensive line in play, those are a quarterback's best friends. Having a good running game and having a solid offensive line to where the quarterback does not have to be the main guy. So I think that was a great destination for Malik Willis. I was just still surprised that these teams didn't take a chance on these quarterbacks in the second round, and they waited all the way to the third. So that was a little underwhelming, right? Because last year's draft, there was just so much more hype, even though everyone and their mama knew that the Jaguars were going to take Trevor Lawrence in the first round with the first overall pick. It's still more intriguing when you have quarterbacks going in the first round. As great as these wide receivers were, as great as Derek Stingley Jr. and Ahmad Sauce Gardner, the two cornerbacks that went number 3 and number 4, respectively, as great as all these players were, the draft still loses a little spice, a little something to it when you don't have those top flight quarterbacks going in the first round.
No, for sure. It definitely was. Like, Jared, I'm more excited about next year's draft than I'll ever have been for this draft. And that wasn't because I was only able to see the first 5 picks before walking into a major, comedy show that didn't allow me to use my phone. It would have been more intriguing to know that there was going to be a big time franchise changing quarterback going with the top picks. And maybe I would have kind of rescheduled things here and there. But because there was a lot of defensive linemen, because there was a lot of wide receivers, a lot of tackles, whatever. And I heard it was one of the worst viewed drafts the last couple of years. And Jared, as we know, these drafts are ratings gold for ABC and NFL Network and stuff the past couple of years. That will bounce back and they will improve on their draft rating from this year. But yeah, so I think we'll go with this to finish off kind of the NFL draft
listen,
stuff.
Man, there was
sorry, go ahead.
In Vegas, and there was 400,000 or 500,000 people that went. So a lot of people going to this. I think the fact that it was in Vegas probably boosted the ratings a little more. No offense, but if this was in Detroit, next year it's in Kansas City. If it was in a smaller town that didn't have that Vegas flair, this draft, the ratings probably would have been right. We saw the Blue Man Group. We saw all these different kind of acts and things going on in between the drafts to keep people, into things. And even though watching it on TV, you were hearing pan to the center stage and you would see something crazy going on. So there was a lot of things going on, outside of football to kind of keep people entertained. And that's kind of what Vegas does. So I think they're very lucky that it was in Vegas because, like I said, if it was in a different market, things could have been a lot worse when it came to the rating. So, yeah, next year, thankfully, we've got some better quarterback competition coming out because that is going to automatically boost the ratings. And, we might even go to the city. Even though we said that last year, we tried to go to Vegas this year. I'm going to keep saying it and speaking it into existence. We're going to Kansas City next year. Just put it in the book.
Let's do it. Let's do it. It'll be a little bit cold. It'll be interesting to see with the cold market how they'll do in April. Although they did do Nashville a couple of years ago, so not the worst thing.
It's fine.
Jared, give me 2 teams that you really liked their drafts, and we'll finish off with that. We don't need to talk about who drafted bad because, again, all this is kind of relative. We don't know how these players are truly going to act in the NFL. So I always feel like talking about a team, how bad they drafted, it's kind of pointless because, right, unless someone egregiously did not pick a position they really, really needed, I think everybody did a okay job this year. So let's just stay positive on this podcast. Jared, give me 2 teams you thought had really good drafts and set themselves up for the future or improve their already kind of playoff worthy team in this 2022 draft.
Yeah, I have one that's an easy one, and I think you might have this as well. So
sure.
I'm actually going to gift it to you, and I'll let you take that one if you so choose. But my first team is going to be the Ravens, and the Ravens, they just, I don't know, that organization is they're not flashy, they don't give a crap, they just kind of do their own thing, they stay in their own lane, and from top to bottom, from ownership on down, everyone knows exactly their role, what they're supposed to do. And they not only draft well, they develop extremely well. And it's a reason why the Ravens are, constantly in the playoffs or constantly knocking on the door for that AFC North division title. They came into this draft, I forget exactly which pick, but if I'm not mistaken, traded out of their original first round pick. And they went down to, where did they go down to? I think they went down to 14, right? They either went down to 14, they stayed, I forget, right? But they ended up getting Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame. And most mocks had Kyle Hamilton going inside the top 10. easily the best safety in this draft. He's got range, sideline to sideline. He can play in the box. He literally played so many positions for Notre Dame. He played strong safety, free safety, left corner, right corner, slot, outside linebacker. He blitzed. Like, the guy literally does it all. I'm not saying he's Ed Reed. I'm not saying he's Troy Polamalu, but those two guys come to mind when you think of an AFC North safety, right? Obviously, Ed Reed with the Ravens, Troy Polamalu with the Steelers. So the Ravens get the best safety, period, in this entire draft. And then with second first-round pick, they get the best center in the draft, and Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa. Now, many projected him to go later in the first round, so he kind of went where his projections were. But for the Ravens to come back and get the best center in the draft, when we all know run the ball, they obviously traded away Hollywood Brown, which we've talked about already on this podcast. So the Ravens, I think they're just going to go to like a triple option offense. Like, they really don't have many receivers on their team, right? They don't have Sammy Watkins anymore. Just run the ball. Literally, run the ball 40, 50 times. What was that? I think it was like week 10. What was that regular season game this past season? It was in Buffalo. I think it was the Patriots and the Bills in Buffalo, and it was like crazy wind. You really couldn't even throw the ball. The Ravens are just going to pretend that it's like 50-mile-an-hour gusting wind game, and they're just going to run the ball. Because that is literally what they're showing they're going to do. They're going to run the ball. They're going to play solid defense. They're going to control the clock. And they're going to be in every single game as long as they pay Lamar Jackson. Then they might be in trouble. But I loved their draft. I loved their picks. They stick to who they are. They got the best safety, the best center, and like I said, they're just going to keep rolling and rolling.
You know, Jared, I normally would just let you say your second team, but I kind of have to disagree with you on this one, that they'd be one of your top drafts. I understand picking the safety and picking the center, and their second round and third round picks were awesome too. But like you said, their best wide receiver right now is Devin Duvernay. Okay, you know what I'm saying? This is the NFL. While every other team is loading up their offense with weapons on the wing and outside, you still need wide receivers, right? You still need wide receivers. So for them to not have drafted a wide receiver after trading Hollywood Brown, I don't see this as a top draft. I like their picks, but still, it's, I thought that they needed to draft a wide receiver.
They stick to who they are. They're going to run the football, probably be 30th or 31st in the league in throwing attempts, because they're going to be first in the league in running the ball. They will run the ball 40 to 50 times a game. It's just what they're going to do. You're going to have to play old school 85 Bears defense, buckle up both chin straps. It's going to be a dogfight, because the Ravens are going to run the ball, and then when they need to, they're going to do bootleg or some type of play action and let Lamar Jackson get out of the pocket and try to find a receiver running across, right? They're simply, in my opinion, not going to rely on receivers winning one-on-one matchups that often, because I think they're just going to control the clock with their running game. And honestly, when they're on point, they are very tough to stop, because they can do multiple different things, not only with their running backs, but also with Lamar Jackson. So I simply, that organization, I don't think they care about receivers. Like, you're right. I don't think your point is wrong. They probably should have, because if I'm on board when they picked at number 14, when they took Kyle Hamilton, Jahan Dotson from Penn State was still on the board. Treylon Burks from Arkansas was still on the board. Who else was the other receiver taken in the first round? Looks like he was it. But yeah, I mean, you had Sky Moore, who ended up going in the high second round to the Chiefs. But like, there were still two solid receivers that they could have taken, but they went for the safety, and then they went for the offensive lineman, which I think is just, they're literally saying, we know that receiver help is out there, and we don't give a damn.
Yeah, no, and that's what that's why I guess I'm trying to say. It's not even that they need to draft a guy in the first round or the second round. It's just to not draft a wide receiver at all just kind of seems a little ridiculous to me. I'm only arguing because you said it was one of your top drafts, not because they didn't have a good draft. I just think that if you don't draft a position of need that you literally don't have, Come on, you got to do a little bit better. Okay, who's your second team? Sorry to rain on your parade.
They don't think it's a need. No, it's okay. They don't think. My second team, this one's tough because I'm kind of going back and forth between the Saints and the Chiefs, but I'm gonna have to go to the Chiefs. And it's like how much more lucky can the Chiefs get, right? And maybe luck is the wrong word, but it's like the Chiefs, obviously, they have so many weapons. They've got Andy Reid. They have a great organization, a great front office, great ownership. Then you get Patrick Mahomes. You got Travis Kelce. You have you have a good defense. And then it's like, okay, we have 2 first-round picks. They get one of the best corners in the league, in the draft, and Trent McDuffie out of Washington, who's going to slide in and instantly be a starter for them. And then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they traded back into the first round. Is that correct? Or did they originally have 2 first-round picks?
They did. They had, it was 29 and 30 back to back.
So then they traded up with their first round, with their first pick in the first round. They traded up to get McDuffie, and then they stuck with their second first-round pick and got George Karlaftis, the defense. So 2 solid defenders. Their defense, if anything, was something that they needed to work on, because even though they lost Tyreek Hill when they traded him to Miami in the offseason, that offense is still loaded. Oh, and then like I just mentioned earlier, with their second-round pick, they got Sky Moore out of Western Michigan, who was one of the shiftiest, best slot receivers in the entire league. Not necessarily a Tyreek Hill fast, but you pair him with a Juju Smith-Schuster and a Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who they've got both in free agency, and then you pair Sky Moore with Mecole Hardman, who they still have, and I think Patrick Mahomes is still smiling, right? He's probably a little sad, but like I said, you pair him, Travis Kelce's still there. So to me, the Chiefs, who they just kind of keep getting better and keep getting younger at that. Younger, they still have a lot of cap by not having to pay Tyreek Hill. So the Chiefs, to me, had another great draft. Reached younger, and I think got better, especially on the defensive end.
Jared, I like that one. I was going to pick the Chiefs. If you didn't pick the Chiefs, I do have 2 other teams I will talk about, and you did give me the New York Jets as well. So I will talk about them first, and then I will get on to my second team. But love the Chiefs draft. The fact that whenever you're able to trade back in a draft too and still get top guys, that's awesome. That Sky Moore pick. Whew. Love it. And the Chiefs,
I thought he was going in the first round.
Yeah, you had it predicted. Yeah. Yeah, no. Again, it's like they
Green Bay Packers. Hello.
Yeah. They replaced Tyrann Mathieu. They somewhat try to replace Tyreek Hill. Everybody kind of forgets they added Juju Smith-Schuster too. So that Chiefs offense will roll, and it will be fine next year. Okay, getting on to the New York Jets draft. I think this is everybody's consensus best draft, and it's really because of the first round, right? When you get this supposed unbelievable talent on all 3 of your picks, 2 early picks, 1 late first round pick, you have to give them credit. They draft Ahmad Sauce Gardner at number 4. They draft Garrett Wilson at number 10, one of the top wide receivers. And then somehow, Jared, they get Jermaine Johnson II, who a lot of people thought might be the first edge rusher taken off the board, besides obviously Trayvon Walker. They get him at number 26. Yeah, and Jerry, that's what's funny about that pick too, is that was the only pick where I was like, dang, the Cardinals could have got him. It's almost like if they weren't to trade for Hollywood Brown, they better have gotten Jermaine Johnson. But they trade for Hollywood Brown, so it's whatever. And then after that, they go and they grab Breece Hall, a solid running back from Iowa State. I mean, he was one of the best running backs in college football for years. Yeah.
Best running back in the draft.
Exactly. They go get Jeremy Ruckert, a top tight end at Ohio State, and then even their 4th round picks, an offensive tackle and an edge rusher. Just really awesome draft for the Jets. I think everybody agrees on this, so I won't go any further. They get their cornerstone corner, no pun intended. They get a wide receiver to help out Zach Wilson. We talked a lot about that in the last podcast. And then they get an edge rusher that should have gone way earlier, as well as running back. Just awesome. A+. The 7 picks, give them 7 pluses on their draft. My other team, and Jared, this might surprise you a little bit, and I think a lot of people are going to get mad at me because it might be a bit hypocritical on both of our parts for me to say this. I kind of liked the Green Bay Packers draft. I kind of liked it. And Jared, here's why. Here's why. Okay, let me just get into this too. I just want to get to all their picks. First of all, they had a ton of picks in this draft. Okay, and I know everybody's going to be like, how did they not pick a wide receiver in round number 1? Because Jared, they picked a wide receiver in round number 2 in pick 3. So essentially, they got a wide receiver in round number 1, and then they also were able to get Quay Walker, an inside linebacker for Georgia, and Devontae Wyatt. The guy I think that really created Trayvon Walker at Georgia, and that's Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle, nose tackle. So they're able to get 3 solid picks, and the last one being a wide receiver. Yes, it's not one of the top wide receivers in the draft, but still, they held on to their picks. They were able to, use that second round pick for a wide receiver. They also get, an offensive lineman in the 3rd round. And, after that, 7 picks after that, too. So, lots of talent to go around. I really liked it. I really like their draft. It is an underrated draft. And I give them at least a B+ on this because they're able to get 2 defenders, improve the defense, and then give Aaron Rodgers another weapon. Fight me on it.
This is going to be very simple. They get a C+ at best. Listen, the Green Bay Packers, they are absolutely allergic to drafting a wide receiver with their first round pick. I believe it's been 18+ years since they've done it. I mean, listen, like, did they forget all the drama that they went through with Aaron Rodgers, him almost retiring, him basically almost asking for a trade, and the Packers having to get on their hands and knees and beg for him not to go, saying, we will give you however much money you want. We will do whatever you want. Just stay in Green Bay and finish out. Agrees to that. You would think that you would want to get him some help. And I'm not saying that the North Dakota State receiver is not good, because I think he is a deep threat. And obviously losing Valdez-Scantling is huge for them, along with Devontae Adams. So needing a deep threat for Aaron Rodgers was huge. But when you had Sky Moore still on the table, when you had a Mechie still on the table, right? Like, I get that those 2 defenders are very good, and you can never have enough edge rushers, right? Don't see how you can once again pass up on a potential first round talent wide receiver. Like, they had to trade up into the 2nd round. They traded up for the 2nd pick in the 2nd round to get Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. But to me, I don't understand why they're so allergic to taking a first round wide receiver. Like, you saw the talent that went in the first round this year. We've seen how much it can help quarterbacks, right? Aaron Rodgers is one of the best, probably the most talented quarterback in all of the NFL, ahead of Tom Brady, in my opinion. He still needs help. We've seen it the last 2 years. He's gone to the NFC Championship game and he has lost simply because he has not had enough weapons. Everyone keyed in on him and Devontae Adams because he threw him the ball 20 times a game, right? And it was like, all right, we know what you're going to do. They have no versatility. They really did not have a second option. And now you lose Devontae Adams, you lose Valdez-Scantling, and you are basically expecting Christian Watson to be your one receiver. I'm sorry, but I do not see the logic in that at all. You have you drafted last year, I believe, in the 3rd or 4th round, so he could potentially be a slot receiver. If I'm not mistaken, I think they did actually sign Sammy Watkins, but he's been often injured, right? He only signed to a 1-year contract. So is he your number 1 receiver? Like, I'm a little curious. You have Tony Runyon, your tight end, who was actually very good for you last year, coming back from a torn ACL. Not even sure if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. So I'm just, you got Aaron Rodgers, you have a solid offensive line, and you have Aaron Jones, a no doubt worse receiving core than you had last year. The first round receiver. Go out and try to trade. You traded away Devontae Adams. You didn't have to do that. I don't understand their logic when it comes to why they do not get top tier talent around Aaron Rodgers. Like they've said it multiple times, year after year after year. Basically, Aaron Rodgers is so good, other players better around him, and he has. One time in his now 17 going on 18-year career has he won a Super Bowl. It doesn't need to change. I don't know what to tell you. And that was back in 2010.
Yeah.
Okay, like you can't hang your hat on that anymore. Time to adjust, and I simply don't think this Packers organization has adjusted. They will keep pounding the table. Aaron Rodgers will make receivers better. Yes, he will. But that has not transitioned to wins in the playoffs when it counts the most. And now you're going into a season with basically rookie receivers and Sammy Watkins, who's often injured.
Well, here's the thing. Again, you're acting like they didn't pick a wide receiver. Like there's John Mechie, there's the guy from Kentucky, all that stuff. But at the point of why they traded up, they wanted to get a wide receiver. They got it with their third first round pick, right? I get it. They gave away Adams. You can't replicate Adams. You saw other teams kind of improve and all that stuff. But I don't know. Again, maybe their philosophy is stack the defense, and when you get to playoff time, Rodgers will be able to do enough to get to a Super Bowl. Yes, that didn't work against the 49ers, but I can't hate him. I'm just talking about the draft. I'm not saying the Packers are going to be Super Bowl champions next year. I'm just saying the draft-wise, when you look at what they needed, they did draft a need. So don't shoot the messenger. Just talking about the draft.
Agree to disagree. I can't sit with you on this.
Sure. I didn't agree with your rate.
And apparently from sources as well. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers apparently wanted Treylon Burks. Apparently he did a lot of film study on him, and I don't know if he relayed this message to the organization, to the front office, to the people that were actually making the picks during the draft. But rumor has it that Aaron wanted Treylon Burks, a big body receiver, a guy he could throw the ball up to, a sure-handed catcher, and then I believe he ran like a 4.45 or something like that at combine. So for how big as he is, he's also very fast. Like I said, you're going into this season with hoping that Sammy Watkins can stay young. Your top tight end coming back from an ACL who's not going to be ready for the regular season, and you're going to have to hope that Christian Watson, who played for North Dakota State, not even a Power 5 conference, so no offense, even though he was burning and scoring all these touchdowns, that was against, not top tier competition. You are basically saying that he is going to come in and be your number 2 wide receiver and the guy that Aaron Rodgers can rely on from day one. I'm not saying that he's not smart enough to pick up the offense and all that stuff, but when you have a certain rapport with a Devontae Adams and then you trade him away and you don't get near, like Devontae Adams, if Devontae Adams is at a 10, right, on the scale, they got back, like, I'm going to say a 4. They are nowhere near receiving corps was last year. Obviously, I guess they still do have Randall Cobb, who's that veteran presence, the great relationship with Aaron Rodgers, all that. But Randall Cobb is not scaring me at all if I'm a defensive coordinator. Really, no one on this offense, skill-wise, other than Aaron Jones, is really scaring me on this offense. If I'm a defense, I'm loading the box. I can't believe I'm saying that because Aaron Rodgers is still very good, but I trust my corners to win one-on-one against Sammy Watkins. I trust my corners to win one-on-one against Christian Watson until he can prove that he can do it in the NFL. I'm sorry. I'm loading the box. I'm saying stop Aaron Jones. Aaron Rodgers, do something.
You know what? I mean, again, we'll agree to disagree. You thought the Ravens had a great draft. I thought the Packers had a great draft.
I thought I almost had you. You kind of hesitated for a second. I thought I almost had you.
No. I have faith in Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, as NFC guys, Jerry, we don't really want the Packers to improve on what they did last year because that would mean they're in the Super Bowl and one of our teams is not, right? But nonetheless, we'll just that's why we do a podcast, right? We do a podcast so we can agree and disagree on this podcast, and the NFL draft is very polarizing for us, and so we'll see who ends up having the better team. Maybe Lamar Jackson starts hating the fact that he can never throw the ball. Maybe Aaron Rodgers somehow improves without Devontae Adams because he doesn't have the weapons and he has to work harder and he has to, so you never know. It's going to be interesting to watch. But I did enjoy this draft and all the weapons, and the fact that when the Packers didn't draft a wide receiver in the first round, the first person I thought of was Jared Smith, and now you don't even agree with me on their draft. So it's perfect. It's perfect. All right. Let's switch topics to end this podcast. We're just going to do kind of a brief discussion here on the NBA playoffs. Like we said, they're in the second round right now. I'm going to check on the current score of the Warriors and Grizzlies. That's the only game we don't know about. And so the Grizzlies won game.
Hold it out.
Mm-hmm. So we got a lot of, we have a couple 1-0 series. We have a couple 1-1 series now. The Celtics getting a big win in their game 2 after kind of getting brutalized by Giannis Antetokounmpo in game 1. The Grizzlies come back. They win game 2 after almost winning game 1. Jared, I'll let you take away on this first. You'll get the first say on this. Who do you look at? Like, it doesn't really matter necessarily what's happening in the series. You can react to it, obviously, but looking at the playoffs right now, who are your teams right now that you think legitimately can win an NBA championship this year? Because obviously sometimes there are teams in the playoffs and there are some injuries to Philadelphia and stuff like that. Who do you think right now has the best chance at getting to the finals and winning the finals here in the second round of the NBA playoffs?
I'll give you 3, and I'll give them to you in the order that I think of their ranking, right? The first team that I think has the highest chance is the Milwaukee Bucks. Unfortunately for them, they are without their other superstar in Chris Middleton. Giannis is still a beast. They still went into Boston in game 1 and whooped on Boston. And then Boston tonight, Tuesday night, May 3rd, came back and got a solid win to tie that series at 1-1. But to me, the Bucks are still the best all-around, most talented team. And if they do get Chris Middleton back, which wouldn't be this series, I believe it would be the next series if they move on, that would be huge for not only for him, but for that team as well. So I'm still putting the Bucks number 1. Number 2 right now, I'm putting the Celtics. And it was tough because I wanted to put the Warriors in there because I think the Warriors had more experience. But the Celtics as a whole, as a team, are probably playing the best team basketball season, right? They did not have Marcus Smart tonight, and they still came out and absolutely dominated the Bucks. They had like a 20-point lead for the majority of the night. So I'm not sure how long Marcus Smart is going to be out. That is somewhat of a huge loss for them. But Jason Tatum is coming into his own as a bona fide superstar. Jaylen Brown is a legit star that is a great 1-2 punch. And like I said, the Celtics team as a whole, everyone knows their role. Like people, they don't try to get too crazy and get out of their role. When they need a bucket, they know who to go to. And the Celtics team is just playing great basketball right now. So I put them at number 2. And then at number 3, I've got the Warriors. And that's not only because of their experience, but when you have the Splash Brothers, and I'm going to include Jordan Poole in that because Jordan Poole is a monster. He has had a breakout year between him, Steph, and Clay. And the way that Draymond is playing, Draymond looks like kind of he's going back to his like 4 or 5 years ago, Draymond Green, where he's really affecting the game. Like talk about a guy that knows his role. He may take 1-3 a game, but he knows I'm the facilitator. I'm the guy that is going to lead the defensive pack. If I get the ball on offense, I'm running and I'm looking for Steph or I'm looking for Clay. Or I'm looking for Jordan Poole at the 3-point line. Like he knows exactly his role. And like I said, this Warriors team just has a lot of experience. They've obviously won, 3 finals, Steph and Clay and Draymond. So they know what it takes to get there. And even though they lost tonight to a good Grizzlies team, this Warriors team coming out of the West are still my favorites. So those are my top 3 teams.
Wow. So, Jared, we're going to disagree again on this podcast. I cannot believe.
Okay.
I cannot believe that you did not put the Suns in your top 3. How could you not put the best team in the NBA all season in your top 3? Because for me, they're number 1. To just get that off my chest. Number 2 is the second best team all season, in my opinion, and that's Golden State. And it doesn't matter that they lost to John Morant, who scored 47 points, tonight and barely beat him in game 1. Excuse me. My voice just disappeared in the middle of the podcast all of a sudden. And number 3 for me is the Boston Celtics. So we're going to completely disagree on this, and it will lead us to have a great discussion. The reason for me having such a dissenting, opinion than you on this podcast is because the Suns, I think, are, it's tough to say this when the Warriors are obviously in the league right now. But the Suns, I think, they gel the best right now. And obviously they're the most healthy. I think Devin Booker, as long as his injury doesn't come back, which it can with a hamstring, the rest of their roster is very, very healthy. With Golden State, they're still missing James Wiseman. We don't know where Steph is as far as his injury, and he hasn't really been the same besides, like, I think it was one of those games against Denver where he kind of went off. He hasn't been the same so far in this playoffs. And then obviously they have the experience from last year of going all the way and losing in 6 to Milwaukee. So that's why they're number 1 for me. What they did last night showed me when they just bludgeoned Dallas, who's not that great of a team. They don't really have a chance to win a championship this year, obviously, but I mean, they bludgeoned them, beat the crap out of them. And home field advantage wise, I really, really like it for Phoenix. Number 2, I say Golden State only because, their history with Steph, Clay, Draymond. Again, I forgot to mention this when I was just talking, but Clay, I don't think is still the same. Yet he's not the Clay of the before he tore his Achilles, right? He hasn't been great this series either. So that's why I have him number 2 behind the Suns. Although Devin Booker got hurt, I still think the Suns are more healthy than the Warriors. But yeah, I mean, we know what kind of runs they can go on. When Jordan Poole, when Klay Thompson, when Steph are doing their thing, when Draymond's doing his thing, they are the most unstoppable team in the NBA. They just haven't been able to do that consistently in this playoffs yet. And, that's why they end up losing a game to Denver. And that's why they end up losing a game and almost losing 2 in a row to Memphis. But, Jared, we know this was a must-win for Memphis in Game 2. The Warriors are going to go back to Golden State. They're going to go up 3-1, right? They're going to go up 3-1. And then all they have to do is win 2 more home, 1 game out of 3, and I think they'll be able to do that. And then obviously we'll get the series against the Suns to prove who's the best team. And the reason I say the Celtics over Milwaukee is because of Chris Middleton. I know the Celtics just lost Marcus Smart, but without Chris Middleton, I think the Celtics defense will be able to contain Giannis enough. And even if it takes 7 games to win this series, if Middleton does not come back, the Celtics will win that series. That is my firm prediction, and I'll stick to that on this podcast. And Jared, you can make fun of me if they end up not, winning the series.
Oh, I will.
And if Middleton doesn't come, yeah, of course. But I just think, again, I look at it with health, and Giannis can't do it all by himself. The Celtics are too talented of a team, too talented of defense. And so that's why I have my top 3. I'll let you rebut, but obviously our three were the exact opposite. Did you like anything I said? Did you hate everything I said?
I gotta put my hand up. Not gonna lie, and I'm a little ashamed to say this. I kind of forgot about the Sun.
Oh my goodness, Jared Smith.
I forgot about him.
It's okay.
I did. I don't know how. Because you're right. They are obviously one of the best teams in the league, and yeah, I don't know. I'm ashamed of myself right now. I'm gonna slap my own hand on that one. Yeah, the Suns should definitely be in there. Right, and this is kind of what's tripping me up a little bit. Not necessarily about the Suns, but a lot of these teams are dealing with injuries right now. Right, like we obviously the 76ers, they don't have Joel Embiid, and he has the concussion and the orbital fracture, and we're not necessarily sure when he's coming back. That is probably the biggest loss in playoffs far, because James Harden is not the James Harden of a couple years ago, and he cannot carry a team on his back like he used to. So the Sixers are obviously short-handed. Their opponent, the Miami Heat, they're missing Kyle Lowry, and even though Miami is a very well-rounded team, and they are more than likely going to beat the Sixers, Embiid, they're still missing one of their key point guards, right? Obviously, Milwaukee is missing Chris Middleton, the Robin to Giannis's Batman. We see with the Celtics, Marcus Smart is out. Phoenix Suns, Devin Booker was out for a few games this past series. Chris Paul has been dealing with injuries. the Warriors not completely healthy. It's like there are so many injuries that are playing major factors in these series, and I'm not using that as excuses at all. But I think that these rankings might be a little bit different. Like, who knows? Maybe you might have Philadelphia in as your number 3 team if Joel Embiid is healthy and actually playing in this series. So to me, that is probably the most kind of intriguing thing about these playoffs is the fact that there are multiple stars that are injured right now, and we don't necessarily know that they're to help their teams, or if they can't come back, is it basically the main reason why these teams could potentially lose out and not advance to the next round, right? Specifically when we're talking about Philadelphia and Milwaukee with Chris Middleton. So the reason why I still have faith in Milwaukee, number one, they are the defending NBA champions, and they have dealt with some injuries throughout the year, right? So they have a lot of bench players that have come into the starting lineup and have played major roles. Number two, Milwaukee in game 1 against Boston, Chris Middleton as well. So they know that they can beat Boston. They already took away home court by winning game 1. They now get to go home for games 3 and 4. So I also think the fact that they kind of got embarrassed tonight against Boston, Giannis is probably pissed off, right? We know he is one of, if not the hardest working NBA players in the entire league. And obviously, I don't think that he's pretty happy that his team got embarrassed tonight. So I can guarantee you he's going to have the rest of his teammates kind of ready and prepared for game 3 and game 4. He's not going to let his team get embarrassed at home like he did tonight. So for me, I think it is very plausible and very feasible that that Milwaukee comes back, gets game 3, potentially game 4, and be surprised in the slightest if they do win the series, even though Boston is a very good team.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't even disagree with you on that necessarily. And obviously, you admitted that you forgot about the Suns, so I don't disagree with you as much as I do. I just think, like, when you look at the other teams, when you look at Memphis, obviously really young, a lot of kind of unproven guys. If they're able to beat Golden State, are they really going to be able to, without injuries, then beat the Suns? Probably not, right? And that's kind of why I don't put Memphis up there. Same with Miami. They may win that series against Philadelphia. They should if Joel Embiid isn't playing. But are they really going to beat Boston or Milwaukee? Probably not, right? The Philly is no slouch even without Embiid. But they're just not going to do it. And then, like, I already kind of shit on Dallas too. I just don't. They only have one star, and it's just not. Dante can't score 70 points each game, and even if he did, I still think they'd lose. So when you look at Milwaukee's a hard 4 for me. Like they could beat Boston. Like I said, it most likely the series will go 7, right? Unless Giannis gets hurt or something like that. And I just think the Celtics, with their defense and their stars being healthy, they'll be able to do it. It's going to be interesting though. It's going to be interesting. I think with Philly, the reason I don't put them up there is because even if Embiid comes back healthy, like it just does. It seems like Harden's kind of trending down in his career. Right, the last couple years haven't been the best. I honestly think, and I'll let you give your take on this too. I almost think that Philadelphia would be a better overall team if they added a little bit more depth to their bench, got rid of Harden, and just ran with Embiid, Tobias Harris, and gave Tyrese Maxey the point guard role 100%. I think Maxey is this. And Harden's this. And I do think that next year they need to really think about maybe getting rid of James Harden. Harden, to me, is turning into Russell Westbrook 2.0, where he's not helping the team enough. And I think a lot of his off the court stuff annoys a lot of people. We saw that video of Tyrese Maxey moving seats right away from James Harden on Twitter today. I think that shows you the chemistry with a star that's not doing what he's supposed to do. It reminds me a lot of the Lakers with Westbrook. So I just think Philly gel-wise isn't there. And even if they have all the stars, they're not going to be able to get to the finals. So that's why we have 4 very solid teams here that could get to the finals. My rankings are Suns, Golden State, and Boston. I just think Boston, health-wise, is just better than Milwaukee.
Yeah, you're not wrong about Philly, but here's the thing. To me, I think with a healthy Joel Embiid, that takes a lot of pressure off of James Harden. To where James Harden has clearly lost a step. He's clearly not what he was in Houston and his early days in Oklahoma City. But he doesn't necessarily need to be that guy with a healthy Joel Embiid, right? Joel Embiid is going to demand a double team. You're going to let Joel the ball on every offensive possession, and then you can let James Harden. The fact that you don't have your superstar right now and James Harden needs to be the 2015 Houston Rockets James Harden, that I think is where this team is kind of butting heads right now, because you're right. Tyrese Maxey deserves all the credit in the world. Probably should be the most improved player in the league, even though that went to who did it go to? Did it go to Ja Morant? I think it ended up going to Ja.
Yeah,
but it really should be Tyrese Maxey, or he at least should have been in that conversation, because he has ballen out this year and taken his game to a whole new level. But in saying that, 76ers are getting rid of James Harden after this year. You do not trade, even though Ben Simmons, you can, the saga, all that, you can say whatever you want. You do not trade Ben Simmons. You do not trade a Seth Curry, who is one of the best three-point shooters, at least percentage-wise, in the entire league. You don't give up that type of capital to then get James Harden for half of a season and then not keep him. Not in Philadelphia. Those fans will never, ever let that down. Problem is, James Harden knows he's getting his money. He knows he's going to get a $200 million, max, super max extension, whatever you want to call it. He knows he's going to get paid, right? And so I don't know, and I don't want to accuse him of this. I don't ever want to accuse an athlete, especially a professional athlete, of this, but I don't know if his mind is exactly in the right place. I don't know if he's actually giving 110% out there, right? And I think you can just look at him. Listen, Father Time is undefeated. At a certain point, everyone is going to lose a step. I don't care who you are, I don't care what sport it is, learn to adjust, learn certain moves, right? Old dogs learn new tricks types of, and they're able to kind of adjust and create a new style of play for themselves. James Harden, to me, just doesn't really look like he's in shape. Like he is.
Of course, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
But he looks bigger. He doesn't look like he's taking the game as seriously as he was years ago. I think he's kind of like, well, I'm James Harden. Right, you look at my resume. You know what I've done. I've been an MVP. I've led the league in scoring. I've carried my team to playoffs. Blah 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 blah. You just traded for me and gave up all that capital. I'm getting my money. I'm good. Is basically to me what James Harden is saying and what he's exuding with his play on the court. When in reality, James Harden should be like, I'm thankful that the Sixers think this much of me. They traded that much capital away from me. I'm in Philadelphia. Isn't Houston, this isn't OKC. If I don't play well, those Philadelphia fans, for as much as they may like me right now, tomorrow morning I could wake up and they're going to freaking absolutely hate me, right? So to me, James Harden just doesn't seem to have that same type of fire in him. And especially with Joel Embiid out, this is another time for him to shine and basically say, yes, you guys trading for me was the right call. And even though it will be, as long as Ben Simmons does not play, it will be the right move. But I wish we could see a more motivated James Harden, because right now it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems like a little lackluster, a little nonchalant, and not the types of things that you would like to see from a quote unquote superstar who, like I said, is more than likely going to get that super max of around $200 million next year.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing, Jared. That's what scares me if you're Philadelphia. Like, do you really want to give that guy the supermax when you could save money by giving money to?
You have to. You have to.
No, I disagree. I think that Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris, along with Embiid in his absolute prime, would be a better version. And then you use the money you didn't pay Harden, and you gain a bench, right, which they don't have, because they kind of gave their bench to Brooklyn. To get rid of Ben Simmons and obviously get Harden, go out and sign a couple veterans, sign a couple role players, kind of like, set yourself up and just go, hey, let's run with these three guys. Like I said, I think Maxey's going like this. That's the guy I want to pay. I don't want to pay, I don't want to pay, Harden, who's declining. I think that's absolutely bad business. So I disagree with you. I don't think they should pay him, and I think they should really look hard if they're not able to win this series against Miami. if they go to the Eastern Conference Finals and they lose and Embiid's not healthy and his torn thumb, you could blame it on that and you give Harden whatever, give his extension. You could always just trade him to like Washington or something like that, or Charlotte, right? But if they're to lose this series, Jared Smith, then no, gotta get rid of him. Gotta get rid of him. Have to.
Well, okay, here's the thing, and maybe I didn't clarify it. I'm not advocating for James Harden to get that new contract because I don't think he deserves it. The Sixers almost have to give it to him. Like I said, you don't trade all that draft capital to get him back for half a season and then just let him walk. Because that's what you would be doing, right? Like, if I'm not mistaken, he's going on an expiring contract. It's not like he has another year of eligibility. I don't believe. So if you don't extend him, walk trading away Ben Simmons after trading away Steph Curry and trading away the assets that they did. That's where I'm saying you can't let that happen, right? And the reason that you're going to have to give him the Supermax is because James Harden and his camp is going to bring his long resume, even though it does not include an NBA championship, which to me, a lot of it is on James Harden himself. But he does have a lot of accolades, and he's going to say, I want this. And how are you going to say no to him? Giving up so much, and you don't have that many assets up. It's not like you're going to be a lottery picking in the draft, and you can get somewhat of a like. I do not see how the Sixers, unless he has another year on his contract. I don't know. But like I said, I agree with you. I don't think they should, but they have to.
So Jared, here's what their situation is. Okay. So with Embiid, they have him paid with a player option until 2026, 2027. So Embiid's on the team forever, right?
Wow.
Tobias Harris is getting an average of $38 million a year. He's locked in till the 2023-24 season, right? But his production's been really, really solid. Tyrese Maxey.
$38 million.
Hey, I didn't sign the deal. That's why the Clippers traded him, right? Tyrese Maxey, 21 years old, he's on the hook for 2 team options at an average of $3 million. Okay? James Harden.
His agent gonna come to the table. That ain't gonna happen no more.
James Harden, player option next year. So you're right. They actually have no choice. They literally have no choice. So we'll just find out what happens. Right? We'll find out what happens. But yeah, hey guys, that's going to be the end of the podcast today. We gave you our 4 teams in the NBA. We gave you what we liked in the draft, and I gave my take, which I guess was too underwhelming for Jared Smith here, about DeAndre Hopkins, because I felt better about it. I love my Cardinals. They're on their way up next season. Tough schedule, but I like it. Hollywood Brown in Hollywood, love it.
It's the offseason. Everyone says that.
Yeah, wait till Kyler tears his ACL first week and then season's over. Don't. I'm just kidding. I don't have any wood next to me, so now, I do. My seat is wood. So, but yeah, that's gonna be the podcast. We will see you at some point, I believe, next week. If not the week after that, we're gonna kind of tailor our podcast now for the NBA playoffs. If there is football news, we will talk about it, but we are going to be kind of transitioning into an NBA playoffs podcast next couple weeks. By the time we record next week, there could be some series done, but it's primarily game 4s and game 5s happening when we be recording. So Jared and I might wait it out and wait for all the series to finish and then go with kind of an Eastern Conference, Western Conference preview podcast, and then just dive in and kind of react to who's in the conference finals. But for this podcast, we are done. I am Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And we'll see you next time talking about some basketball.